Thank you, Madam President and members of the Parliamentary Assembly. Let me begin by thanking you for this opportunity. I take it both as an honour and an opportunity. An opportunity because the issues that you are considering this afternoon stand at the centre of the ILO's own mandate. And I think that the two presentations we've seen from Mr Willemsen and Mr Honko have brought out some of the essential points that I wish to base my comments upon. Let me begin by the context of Europe's employment situation. 7 years after the onset of the financial crisis, Europe continues to struggle to attain real recovery. That means that unemployment remains unacceptably high, falling slightly in some countries, but stubbornly high in the Eurozone in particular, and with young people the particular victims of the situation in which in some of your member countries, if you're under 25 years of age, you're more likely to be unemployed than employed, is a circumstance that should concentrate all of our minds. The bad news is that on current trends, the global unemployment situation is getting worse and not better. Let us remember that in the first years of crisis, the European social model, labour market institutions, social dialogue were very effective in preserving jobs and protecting households. In the same 1 year, Germany and the United States suffered the same decline of gross domestic product, but the United States lost 4 times as many jobs proportionately than Germany, because the European social model provided effective responses. That has changed since 2010 and the onset of the sovereign debt crisis, when the effects of austerity policies set in and placed some of the basic precepts of our European social model under strain. And let me say to you, as perhaps my key message, that I firmly believe that the proper response to Europe's multiple challenges lies not in dismantling its social model, nor in departing from the basic principles of social justice, social partnership and solidarity that underpin it, but rather using those values as instruments of recovery, not as an abstract philosophical notion, but as very practical instruments of policy. This, I believe, is the direction we should take. It was not these values that caused the crisis, but it is these values can help us out of the crisis. Let me say a few words about the specifics of collective bargaining trends in Europe. I detect 3 trends that I'd like to bring to your attention, which I think merit your concern. The first is that we have seen, in the context of crisis response, a removal or restriction of the extension of collective bargaining agreements to cover whole sectors. Agreements made by labour market actors have in the past been extended to cover all employees in a given sector. That is increasingly less the case, and the coverage of collective bargaining has been reduced accordingly. Similarly, there has been a movement to the decentralisation of the level at which bargaining takes place, with profound consequences for the balance of the collective bargaining process. This has happened in a number of countries, particularly in the south of Europe, with Greece and Spain being examples. The third trend relates to the public sector, where modifications of existing industrial relations systems has been particularly noticeable, with the obvious intent of making savings in public expenditure, sometimes at the expense of collective bargaining principles. The right to strike is a matter of controversy in the ILO, and I think it proper that I say so. It has been understood for more than half a century in the ILO that the right to strike is a natural corollary of freedom of association and the ILO Convention that covers it. I just want to note that that proposition is now under challenge, and that the ILO has and has to resolve a major controversy in relation to the right to strike. Madam President, I believe that trends in collective bargaining are very intimately related to trends and growth of inequality in our society, which did not begin with the crisis, but which have certainly been exacerbated by the crisis. There are three reasons why we should be worried about inequality in our society. One is the obvious imperative of social justice and fairness, which I believe should appeal to us all. The second is that it is increasingly recognised that inequality at the levels it exists today is a drag on economic growth. This is recognised and has been popularised by groundbreaking research done by the International Monetary Fund. It's bad economics. And thirdly, high levels of inequality in our societies today act as a barrier to social mobility. That is unfair, but it also means that we are wasting talent in our societies because talented people no longer have the avenues to progress, to exercise those talents. I am encouraged that increasing political attention is being given to the crisis of inequality in our societies. I was pleased that in the World Economic Forum in Davos last week, inequality was identified as the most acute global risk factor by business leaders in the world. I think that's good recognition. The problem is that recognition does not get translated into credible policy reactions. Rather, the same reactions tend to militate towards continued increase of inequality in our societies. Madam President, I think we need to look at the sources of inequality, and to do so, we have to revert to questions of rights at work, collective bargaining, and many others. The fact of the matter is that over 40 years have seen the decline of the Labour share of national income in practically all of your countries. This did not start with the crisis, it will not finish with the crisis. But the fact of the matter is that wages are falling relative to returns to capital, and this is breeding increasing inequality in our societies. I put it to you that if you want to address inequality, you need to address the issues that have been raised and brought to your attention by your rapporteurs. What do we need to do about this situation? I think we need to act on minimum wage policy. I think we need to act on increasingly precarious forms of work. I think we have to restore collective bargaining to its proper place in our working lives. But above all, and I finish with this, I think we need to recommit to processes of social dialogue. I'll give you one example. It's already been mentioned that in Greece, social dialogue became one of the first victims of the crisis. Effectively, social dialogue no longer exists in Greece. The ILO has made considerable efforts to revive social dialogue in Greece by convening the social partners in Geneva to some good effect. But the problem is that the actors of social dialogue will not be able to return to the negotiating table if they consider, as in the case of Greece they have reason to consider, that their margin of action, their possibility to influence national policy, has been removed to another place, and that the interventions of the Troika, of European institutions and the IMF, have effectively confiscated the possibility of the social actors to do the job that they would normally do. There are important implications for democratic process and legitimacy arising from that consideration. Madam President, I will conclude by repeating what you said in your kind introduction, that the ILO looks forward to strengthening its contacts and its cooperation with the Council of Europe. I said I took this intervention as an opportunity, and I hope that the opportunity above all is to move forward in that spirit. And I thank you for your attention.